high and the mighty will fall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metza. We have our third episode, our tribute to the late, great Spider John Koerner, a man I consider to be America's greatest folk singer. Tonight's show, we're rounding up the series of episodes with some great musicians. Judy Larson, Murray Duchesne, Grant Johnson, and Papa John Kolstad. Enjoy. I couldn't be more delighted to have one of my favorite people on the phone. Judy Larson is considered the godmother of the Dickeytown West Bank folk scene. I consider the godmother to anybody that picked up a guitar and hung out by Cedar and Riverside. And Judy Larson, with her then boyfriend and husband Bill Hinckley, held forth for decades, playing beautiful folk music on the West Bank and the Prairie Home Companion and all points in between. We're continuing our discussion, our tribute to the late, great Spider John Koerner, and there's nobody that knew John longer, or maybe even better, than my guest, Judy Larson. Judy, how are you this evening?
Well, I'm fine. I just cruising along, actually. Looking at my messy house.
keep cruising. When was the first time you met John Koerner?
Yeah, but it was at the Scholar, the old 10 o'clock Scholar, the first Scholar in Dickeytown on 14th Avenue. And Dave Lee, was it Dave Lee? And Fishman, Bob Fishman owned it.
Okay.
And that was what it was called, the 10 o'clock Scholar. And in the summertime, it had a screen door, you know, and the music you could hear it down the block sometimes on those humid nights or, you know, sunny days or whatever. And he was sitting on the stool in the window. I mean, a little stage, not much of one. And everybody sat there when they played. And, you know, they had some bagels and cream cheese and coffee at that time and espresso teas. And it was kind of a shoebox room, you know, so rectangular room. And, let's see, Dave was pretty young. He was maybe 15 or 16 years old playing. And
she's talking about Dave Snaker Ray.
Yeah, yep. And he lived down the block on 4th Avenue. That's where he grew up. And by then he was going to U High. And he was doing a lot of theater, too. They had a great theater teacher there.
Huh.
And they would take their high school actors on the road all summer in the Midwest. Theater on the road. And and so they got together anyway, and I don't remember when they got together with Glover exactly, but I do remember Glover's 21st birthday down at Madden's Barbecue on Nicollet. And we were all underage, you know. It had beer and barbecue. And Maddie was a tall, kindly woman, wonderful, you know. And she would let us in, and we could drink beer. And so there was a lot of playing down there, and that's where where Glover would be soaking his harps in his beer, or you know, beer or water. If he didn't have water, he'd soak it in beer. And that was, I supposed to kind of clean it out. You remember seeing him pounding the water on his thigh and on his jeans, getting the water out so it was cleaned out, you know, and so that the sound was supposed to be clearer or something. And so there was just a kind of coming together of people that ordinarily would not have seen each other if there wasn't a Dickeytown or university. You know?
I gotta call my dog down. Hold on for 1 second.
Who's that Fido?
Oh, Fido. Whoa. Whoa. All right, there you go. Oh my goodness.
Does that dog sing? Does that dog sing?
That's better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, cats used to pull the harmonica out of my mouth. I was laying down playing that or a tin whistle. Even cats I didn't know would come out of the corner somewhere, come over, and actually pull the instrument out of it. I left them, of course, but
Right.
they would put both paws on the harmonica and pull down. And the same with the tin whistle. Cats I didn't even know.
Oh, that's funny.
So
Well,
Cats Under the Stars, the name means a lot to me.
Well, Dave Hunt used to call us rats under the stairs.
Oh, God. Oh, that's funny. Oh, that's funny.
Even today.
Oh, man, that's funny. Yeah, Dave was hilarious.
Well, let's go. Let's jump back into John, and then I want to talk a little bit about those characters and dig it down. So, do you remember anything specifically? What hit you about Kerner's playing in his songs, Judy Larson?
Well, he was doing things like man going around taking names. It's a lot of lead-belly kind of stuff. He had come out of I think he was in the Marine Corps or something, which I didn't know until now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That he was married, that wasn't going so well. He lived in an apartment there. And so we began to be at little parties,
Yeah.
And some of the favorites, I remember I'm Old Tom Moore of Bumbershore from the good old golden days.
Yeah.
They call me a bummer and a ginsot too, but what cares I for praise? Praise, I mean. And it's all about the 49ers gold rush,
Days of 49.
And here this ghost was wandering around. And I think he really took that one to heart, So did I. I love that song, just on my own, And he sang that, and oh God, think about it. Ain't got no use for. Did he say that ain't got no use for my no red rocking chair? Or
Okay.
there's another version of the same song, and that was a favorite of mine. There was ain't got no honey baby now,
Mm-hmm.
And I've always thought that some of those songs, his heart was really in. He had the blues, for somebody and something. And he had that sound at times. Even though later years, you'd heard him sing those songs many times.
Yeah.
And yet you always felt something, was personal in it, right?
And so authentic.
Yeah, and the way he played, too. Those three guys were. When I was in L.A., when I took their first album along with me, people didn't believe that they were white boys.
Right.
And it was kind of neat. And, they did affect. I think somebody told me they had a friend on, and this must have been after they played Newport. His friend had a friend it was in Italy, and a woman, was visiting the Vatican. And there were 3 people playing Kerner, Ray, and Glover on the Vatican steps.
Wow.
Oh my God, it was just amazing. But there was the blues in his voice too,
Right.
and married 3 times, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
And, the Danish wife, they had a little girl, and she had green eyes, and she could make her eyes vibrate. She would move them.
What?
Yeah. They. I don't remember if they moved up and down. Or they real fast. I don't know
Wow.
how she did it. That was. Even found that she could do that on her own. I bet nobody taught her to do that. And Kerner was such an original person.
Yeah.
He stuck to who he was. And I know people ask him, why didn't he work to be more successful? Well, what is successful? Anyway, really,
Right.
And that, it's kind of hard to answer that, really. I think he wanted to be his own boss, and he wanted to wander where he wanted to, when he wanted to, be with his friends or be alone,
Right.
I think that's what I feel anyway, but, maybe wrong about all that stuff. But
Well,
Red Nelson is one of the people that really knew him long. There's another person you might want to interview.
Yeah.
He tires out these days. Pardon?
Yes. No, I love Red. I'd love to get some of those stories.
Well, they took a motorcycle ride. Red had a 57 Bonneville, and he was a master at that motorcycle, and he was also was his own legend too, really. But he was a legend in St. Paul, Minneapolis. And about things he had done on that bike. But that's another story. But anyway, he took Kerner and they went out to California on that motorcycle. They're crossing the desert in the middle of nowhere, and somebody tried to run them off the road.
Wow.
Now, Kerner had never been into any. He'd never probably been on a motorcycle or much of one anyway. Not like Red,
Yeah.
And Red pulled a gun out of his boot and started to blast away at that car that tried to. These people that tried to run them off the road. There was nobody else, I think, on the road. And boy, they got out of there in a hurry. Those people, left them alone. And,
So, are you telling me Red?
and yet he's always said that Red was responsible for leading him astray. That's what he said. Because they had so much fun there in California. Yeah.
So they drove out on 2 guys on 1 motorcycle.
That's right. Yes.
Wow. I wonder if Kerner took his guitar along. I'd have to think so.
I would think so.
God.
I would think so. I'll tell you, you talk to Red. Red is not. He takes naps a lot now, and has some health problems.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Now, tell us about, speaking of Red, there's that Kerner and Glover song, Rent Party Rag, and of course,
absolutely.
Those rent parties were legendary. Talk about what a rent party actually was, Judy.
Where it was? It was down back of where the...
Yeah, what it was and where they were.
It was back of where the tall buildings on the West Bank were built. The Key Club was up on... It was down the street, I think, from the Key Club, maybe. I just knew how to get there. I don't remember the street, but it was like 3 stories, I think. And it seems to me, and so somebody was... Kerner had a room up there. And Crash Connor was one of the first open heart surgeries in the whole country.
Yeah.
And he was up there. He's a cab driver, tall. And blood, you could tell the blood wasn't always getting to his head and the oxygen. He was so tall. He was a little crazy. And there were parties. And they would sell, oh God, what was the name of the beer? Well, they had Liney's too, but for a quarter a bottle, I think. The rent party. So they'd rush over and get cases of that. And some other kinds. Like old piffer, they called it. and then there was a lot of people there, and they planned a real good one. They gave you breakfast in the morning, too.
Oh.
Eggs, and the these guys. And another time, something was cooking in a big pot. And I asked Red, "What's cooking?" And he said, "Cocker Spaniel." Oh, God, it was fun. That could be dangerous, too. Young men with guns, God. And the factory in back of that building, the roof was just full of empty beer cans when they left. I don't know what was over there. There was a fire escape so you could get up on the roof, too. That was, I remember. And, that was a lot of fun. A lot of music, And, we'd all play different times, whenever we felt like it, or together. So it was fun.
What about, so how did you run in? Because, of course, the histories of Spider John Kerner and Bob Dylan are related in the early days. When do you remember running into Bob Dylan?
Again, it would either be at those parties or parties at Morton. Morton had a pad down on the Washington Flats there, under the Washington Avenue Bridge. And he painted. He had big abstracts on the wall that he'd been painting. And Dylan was there. That was one of the places. But he also played on the stool. I used to accompany him over to the Onion, Purple Onion, or I think it was called. Snelling, over by Hamlin.
Yeah.
And that's where he had gotten a actual solo gig, somewhere else. And Marv Davidoff wasn't around. The Freedom Riders were going down. I saw Marv on the street and said, "Where are you going?" "Tomorrow we go down." That was Alabama, wasn't it?
Mississippi.
In Mississippi. Sorry. And I said, "What are you going to do?" And he told me, and it was new to me. I was a little younger and wasn't as, into politics yet at all, right?
Right.
And there was another big guy that was going to go, but his mother told him she didn't want him to, and that was all right. They didn't make you weren't a sissy because you backed out or something like that. They didn't shame you for that. And Heather Baum's husband, Bob Baum, he was down there. And there were some others. So it was interesting how you had politics coming in. You had McCosh's bookstore was replaced by Bridgman's on 14th Avenue.
Sure.
And but before they tore that McCosh's down, people were were protesting, right? And written in Shinola on the windows was, "I screamed for McCosh."
Huh.
It was funny, just the humor. There's such a wonderful sense of humor here. Don't you think so?
Oh, well, and that was going to be my next question, Judy Larson. I mean, one of the things about going and seeing Kerner play, and I've saw him over 40 years, was what a great sense of humor he had. And how he could tell a story.
Yeah, I gave him a story, the one about, there was an antique joke about the vagabond going from farm place to farm place, half-mile driveways up to the farm place during the Depression. And a bartender had told me that this one, he was from South Dakota, and said, "This is a real oldie," he said. and it was that the guy would go and ask for work or food, right, or both, working for food, and the farm woman most of the time would say, "I'm sorry, young man, but we don't have enough for ourselves," or and this would go on. Sometimes he lucked out and he ate well, and but one time, it gotten kind of cold now. It's starting to get cold, and he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Had no luck, and shoes were wearing out. The soles were flopping on his shoes. He's walking down the road, and there's a little ice happening in places, and there was a road apple, or a horse apple, some people call it. Right? You know what that is.
I do know what that is.
Okay. So he gets an idea, and he chips it out. And puts it in his pocket and goes up the next long driveway to the farm place and knocks on the door and said, pulls this out of his pocket. She comes out, yes. And he said, "Lady," he said, "do you have any salt and pepper for this?" And she said, "Oh," she said, "my poor young man," she said, "why don't you go out to the barn and get yourself a hot one?" And I was so proud. I had told him that one. And I was so proud. He used that one on stage, And I was so proud that I knew where it came from, And antique jokes are just hysterical, But, I mean, it's all about generosity and bad times and
sure
lack of generosity,
Now, when Spider John just started to play, like at the 10 o'clock Scholar, was he telling stories and telling jokes?
No, I don't remember. No, I don't. I remember him just getting up and playing. At that time, I don't think anybody had really snappy patter.
Right.
At first. But if a well-traveled player came in, I'm hearing an echo. If a well-traveled person came in, they might have come from a different part of the country and realized that people were using, some talk in there, some patter.
Right. So now tell us about. Let's go back a little bit. You talked about backing up Bob Dylan at the Purple Onion. Tell us about that.
Well, I didn't back him up. I went with him. I accompanied him. I didn't back him up. I was with him. He wanted me to come along.
Did you guys bust? How'd you get there? Did you bust there?
Yeah, bust there. And we also climbed, and Turner did too, the rooftop on 14th Avenue.
Above grade.
We'd climb up in the back in one of the buildings and get up there. And sometimes we could manage to get to more than one building, on top. And so we could sit up there and cool off. Maybe it had been hot during the day, and now it had cooled down a bit. We could kind of look down at the street and see what was going on, and it was fun to be up there and sipping on beer, 3-2 beer or something. There was a place next door to the Scholar called the Dirty Grocery. Next told them.
Do you as long as we're on beginnings of Dinkytown, do you remember hearing Bob Dylan for the first time?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it got the first time, but it would have been at the Scholar. Again, on that same stool.
Sure.
And later on, when Butch Thompson got out of the Army, then got a piano up there, and he would play, and that was divine too. Oh my God, to walk down the street and through that screen door to hear Butch playing on the piano was just like you were walking on, you're above the sidewalk.
Right, walking in New Orleans and stumbling on Jelly Roll Morton at some club.
Oh my God, it was just amazing. And you could go sitting back on an old beam or something, sitting back of the building too. and doors were open. You could hear it out there. They also went to the with Dylan the mixers, and there was a little jam room back there. I think it had curtains, and people would play back there a little bit. There wasn't a lot of it, but you know. And all those places had excellent graffiti in the bathrooms. You know, I do remember one, and it was in the Old Scholar. And, you know, the protest was always down with something, like down with the blah, blah, blah. And somebody had written very small in woman up above the mop board over the door. But you could see it in small lettering, and it said, "Down with the Zumbro River."
Down with the what?
Down with the Zumbro River.
What was the...
So they were always commenting on each other, you know what I mean? You know, but if that was humor, I have a suspicion that it might have been Peg Larson. And she hung around with Glover. Oh, my God. But Dylan, I had this Martin that I've always had since high school. And they gave it to me. It was her aunt through marriage, and who had died. And that was my Martin. And now the word was out that everything was Martin New Yorkers. That's what you wanted.
Sure.
Well, Martin New York is much older than the 1928, 29 Martin, you know. I mean, it goes back to the 1800s, and the smaller guitar. But mine was a wonderful sound to it. And there was something, anyway. So Dylan, he really wanted that guitar. He really wanted to ask if he could buy it from me. And that was, we hung around up on the rooftops and stuff in daytime, too. And I knew that he was after that. And I said, "No, you can't have it. This is mine."
Right.
I didn't say that to him like that. But he did give me a capo, and it was a screw-down capo, the old-time one before elastic bands around them. And I still have marks on it because we didn't know enough to stop pressing down so hard, you know. So it's got a scar on the neck from that time. And it kind of hurts me to see it. But
so Dylan completely...
You get really attached.
Dylan completely screwed up your guitar.
Don't say that. Oh, no, I guess probably. No, it wasn't that. I probably did it myself, but he gave me that capo, and I screwed it up. But in those days, you were so enthusiastic about your music too, and it's probably happened to you. You slept with your instrument practically, you know.
Yeah.
And you taught yourself so much because nobody could teach you some of these. There's nobody around to teach you that stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And to play the guitar and do it well and do it in a style that you wanted, and also the dialects, southern dialects, black dialects, especially in the in the blues, the old blues stuff. We didn't exactly have the same language, you know, and some of those songs would take 10 years to figure out one word, because it was an old recording and maybe scratchy, and it was hard to hear the way it was recorded too.
Did you guys back in the day, Judy, ever sit around and not like necessarily at a party, but sit in somebody's living room and trade songs?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And that was so much fun. And you played your heart out. If it was a sad song, you played your heart out too.
So,
Just amazing.
who would you be sitting with, trading songs and learning from one another back then?
Trying to think. Well, I had a couple of high school friends. My friend Miriam, she was an actress too. And she went to Luther College, and then she went down to Fisk University as a exchange student. So and she was in the Fisk choir, believe it or not. Honest to God. And she was the help. I don't know if I can remember exactly what we did. If we just sang our stuff and listened and went around, we didn't join in particularly. Oh, we jammed though, and we'd back up on our guitar if we wouldn't maybe sing along. We didn't do much of that. In fact, sing-alongs bored me. I mean, you know.
Just share that great joke that Kerner stole from you. Did you ever turn John Kerner?
He didn't steal it. I gave it to him. But he got mileage out of it. I was so glad. So, what'd you say?
Do you remember turning Bob Dylan or Kerner on to any of your songs that they might not have heard of?
Well, the way I did The Water is Wide was a little different than if you were English, you would have done it with a lute anyway, right? You know, if you wanted to, be that picky about it. But I put a little rhythm to it. And, of course, I was still into kind of simple chords, And I think there was a Dylan birthday party out in the St. Louis Park. And it was somebody's mother and daughter who had come back from school in the East. And was a friend of Dylan and then maybe his family. And they were the girls were making a big deal out of him because he was going to go to New York.
Right.
And they were happy for him, and telling him what to look up, sort of, And I was out maybe with Marv Davidoff in another room. And I wanted people to hear this beautiful song, Water is Wide. I remember that, but I can't remember that part of trading so much. I think we each were independent that way, looking up. We had our own taste buds, if we, I think that was more it. So there wasn't much of that. If you were with a different group of people, that's maybe another thing. They were having hootenannies in their backyard. Then that's different. And there was some of that you traded and sang along with. I heard a 10-year-old boy sing The Briar and the Rose. He was a neighbor boy of people who were holding a backyard party. And a 10-year-old boy singing this Elizabethan song, you just go, oh my God. It was just heavenly to hear that, Yeah, any 10-year-old boy would have an interest in that. You know? God. So I would run into stuff like that. I can't say that we really traded so much. Or you might later hear a different version of it, where did I get that rocking chair and ain't got no honey baby now, There was a lot of, when Bill came, there was a lot of bluegrass.
Right.
Too. But it wasn't the only thing he did, of course. And, let's talk about the Mezzo Waltz.
That's a song Bill
Mezzo March. And the Mezzo March, you walk in and
I used to be so
the forest.
when you play the the Metza Waltz or the March, whatever it was. Anytime I came there where I saw you playing, it was
Absolutely.
one of the great honors of my life, Judy.
We had to announce you were coming through the door. I love it. Yeah, there's some beautiful music, you know. Some of those Finnish tunes are just, and they've been ignored, really, you know, by other people, I think. And so we did learn a few songs, probably to get us into a neighborhood up north, you know, and say, well, people that like us, you know. But and it was really pleasing to hear that they liked what we did when we did the few of those tunes. One time at Swan River, right where it turns, you know, there was a resort there. And we were coming down from Deer Lake, and we stopped there. And there was a picnic table along the road. I don't know what road it was either. And it was kind of busy, so it was probably a Sunday afternoon going home, you know. And we sat on the picnic table, and we picked out the fiddle and the guitar, and played, of course, the Metza Waltz and a few others. And the guy came out, and then he brought his family out, you know, that owned the place.
Right.
And he was delighted that somebody was playing something Finnish.
Nice.
You know? And then when we left, he went to his freezer, because a lot of times these fishermen forget after they've cleaned the fish and everything, put it in bags, put it in the freezer, and when they go home, a lot of times they would forget them, so he gave us a bunch of walleye.
Good.
I remember that. That was a compliment, you know.
Right.
So we were always looking for compliments too. You know?
Well, you know, Judy, I grew up with my grandfather listening to those. For his wedding in 1928, someone bought him a Victrola, and I still have this incredible collection of 78s. So I used to, when I was a kid, I'd go over to Grandpa's apartment. Oh. They always lived above a barn in downtown Virginia, and we'd listen to these old Finnish ballads and waltzes, and I swear to God, that's where I developed my love of minor keys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your love of Sibelius, too, boy, I'll tell you. Yes. That's another thing. You know,
tell us about a couple other characters we need to know about to understand Dinkytown in the late 50s, early 60s. Tell us about Diamond Dave Whitaker, the guy that turned Bob Dylan on to Woody Guthrie.
Oh, God, it's so long since I thought about Whitaker. He was a little wiry guy. And his wife, Gretel, she was buxom, really very buxom, like me.
Yeah.
But geez, I'd have to really yank my head around to even remember much now about that in particular. And it was Bill Grimes. Yeah, he was a black artist, and he wore a lot of fluorescent lime green vests and stuff at that time. Kind of stood out on the street at nighttime, actually. And there were a lot of artists around, you know, not just musicians. And Max Euler. Remember Max Euler?
Yes, I've heard.
There was a wild man. Whitaker, that's about all I can think of off the moment.
How about our mutual friend Dave Morton? Talk about Dave for a little bit.
Well, he had that house. At Washington Avenue Bridge. I didn't know it, but I had known him when I was in grade school. They lived in St. Anthony Park in St. Paul for a while with some other. I could remember he had some buddies. They were all tall, you know, long-waisted guys, and I was short, little, tiny. And but they were a little older. His dad, I think, ran for a while the art department. I think. And at that time, it was very strict, you know, to have a kid and your kid. The cops were always walking in on parties. You couldn't. They have to knock at least now, don't they? You know?
Oh, I got lost. Hold on, I clicked out of the thing. Okay, we're back. Patrick, are we good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Judy, we just got we got a little more time here. Were you, Dylan hitchhikes out to New York in '61. A year later, he's got his record deal with Columbia. Were you as amazed as everybody else at that meteoric rise when he hit New York City?
Yeah. He came back. I hear an echo there. He came back after he'd been gone about a year, and we were at the coffee break where we played now a lot, and the stage was a table. And he came back and he said, well, the book by Woody was the Bible. He said, that's the Bible, you got to read this. And then he said, you see this? This is Woody's belt.
Wow.
He said, I've been visiting him, and he gave me this belt, and he's mumbling now, you know. He didn't mumble before so much. He was talking like ragtime cowboy. Oh, God, what was his name? He was from New York. A famous singer, sang a lot of cowboy songs. Stuff.
Oh, Ramblin' Jack Elliott.
Yeah, Ramblin' Jack. Scott Gottlieb. I mean, Stan Gottlieb used to call him the ragtime cowboy Jew because he had it. You know, the mumbling was a method acting, really, if you think of it like that, maybe.
Right.
And so it was Elliot forever after mumbled when he talked, and so did Dylan. You know, and he came back, and Max Mueller set up the microphones and the coffee break that night, and Dylan sang a few songs, and he was on his way to being famous. And he sure wrote a lot of good songs, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one question about another name that has always intrigued me. I believe she's still friends with Shirley Morton Dave's widow, and that's Bonnie Beecher.
Oh, yeah. She married what was later called Wavy Gravy.
Yeah.
Before that, he was, his last name was Cohen. He was a comedian.
Hugh Romney.
Yes, that's right.
Hugh Romney.
And I saw him on Lake Street in one of the comedy places. And he was genuinely funny, and on the protesty side. And Bonnie went to U High. She was a year or two older than Dave Ray. And she was an actress. Again, they had a wonderful theater company in that school. And, of course, every kid had about 175 IQ per class. All these faculty kids, you know, they were miles ahead in many ways. Their parents worked with them, of course, and also registered them to go to school before they were even old enough to go.
Right.
And that to get into that school. Now that's all gone, you know, I think.
Now, what's Bonnie Beecher's position? Was she around? I know there's that
She was from Edina. I know she went to high school in Edina. Oh, no, I mean, she went to high school at the U High, but her parents lived in Edina. And I was going to St. Cloud later, and my roommate had been one of her best friends out in Edina, I guess, at one time. And anyway, she left with Ivars Perlbach, who was a wonderful Latvian young man poet. God, he was, and he died in L.A. Later in a motorcycle accident, and but they were together in L.A. and she was getting jobs. You can see her in
she was
what's the night?
Wasn't she an episode of Star
Science
Trek?
fiction one that came on in the 60s. There's one that one of the sons of Bing Crosby is sort of a foolish man, a young man, and she's sort of a ghost. She was beautiful too, in her, way. And so she was that, and then she was getting some jobs in divorce court too. So they're all real jobs, Well, the science fiction one wasn't, but that was a good job. But then she ended up in San Francisco, turning on the public,
Yeah.
And so she and Romney now were an item, or Wavy Davis.
So, Judy, just to kind of sum up, just talk about that beautiful, fertile ground in Dinkytown and then travel to the West Bank, all the folk and blues and artistry and painters and modern freethinkers. It must have been incredibly exciting just to be a part of it.
Oh, it was. When you see that in other younger people today, you might not recognize it right away, And you don't want. I never wanted somebody to take my words so,
right,
important, But I have a sort of a distant relative that has been living down here for a couple of years. Well, my dad said you sang this song back in blah blah blah, and he remembers it,
Hey.
and I think, well, geez, but usually they can't tie up where we got it, where it comes from. Did I tell you that? I'll tell you a joke. Did I tell you that? I guess this is 1953 or 1954. On our old Raytheon on Sunday afternoon, a program came on. I'll try to speed it up. From this woman she was a blind harpsichord player from Poland. And she had her own show. Liberace was on at that time too, I mean, that year and that era. But anyway, she was blind and an older woman, and she would talk a little, and then she'd play. She was an outstanding Bach interpreter for the whole world. And Wanda Landowska was her name. So Annie Goldfuss, her real name was Annie Boots. She married Billy Goldfuss, divorced him, and married again Chase. Annie Chase, you might have met her. Brilliant, funny, crazy. And she said, one day she said, if Wanda Landowska, because Annie was interested in her harpsichord and had one, if Wanda Landowska had married Howard Hughes, divorced him, and then married Henry Kissinger, she would be a Wanda Hughes Kissinger. Which refers to that old song, I wonder who's kissing her now. Remember that? Our parents and grandparents would play it. I wonder who's kissing her now. I wonder who's in waltz, What's the wonders? Yeah. I wonder who's teaching her how. I wonder who's buying the wine, telling lies, and so on. And there was a very famous song, old sheet music. And to me, you tell that to somebody who's even in their early 20s, and they don't know they don't get the joke because they never knew the song.
Right. Or the players. Who remembers Henry Kissinger?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Judy,
Yeah.
I just got a couple more
And
questions.
Howard Hughes.
Yes, exactly. I'm reminded, I loved your music and your music with Bill over the years, but I loved you as a human being, and once again, you're reminding me how funny you are. But tell us, people out there, for somebody that's known John Kerner for almost 65, close to 70 years, how are you going to remember Spider John Kerner?
Well, I think of him as, he had a lot of friends on the East Coast that he played with, too.
Yeah.
That I don't know. He's brought some of them back with him a couple of times. Older guys, And not necessarily professional players either.
Right.
But I think of him at his cabinet, which I never was at, on Knife Lake, I think it was. And he made it out of old windows and doors and stuff at first, I guess. And he had to kind of bury like his mower or whatever, scythe or whatever he used. And he and Bruce Rubenstein were really good friends, just like brothers. Both of them were skinny and had no butts. I remember that. And well, there's a couple of tales, but one of the things that they would do, I heard that they did, was they go out on the lake, and they had probably been reading books about fresh fish. The fresher, the better. So they took a hibachi or something out in an aluminum boat. And when they caught a fish, they cleaned it right now and put it on the hibachi and ate it. Proving the story. Fresh fish are better. Fresh spot.
That's probably
and the other was the dunk tank at the rent party. Not rent party, but the rent strike on the West Bank. Were you there at all?
I can't wait.
Well, it was against the, all the homes were bought up now by the towers, the towers that be. And they put up they made it into kind of a carnival atmosphere, and they put up a dunk tank at the end of the triangular piece of grass that Palmer's had. You had to have a lot of water in that tank.
Right.
And then you had to have the trip levers and the target and
sure.
Somebody to take the money and hand the balls to them. So I'm walking up either, and I'm right behind the two of them, Bruce Rubenstein and John. Now, John was kind of a frugal guy. He didn't have a lot of money and didn't spend a lot. And the two of them are walking up, and I'm right behind them in their little blue jean asses, They're walking up, and Rubenstein is going to get even with Dave Lee, who's sitting on the dunk chair. Rubenstein had turned him in for selling pot at his establishment, Caesar's. So Rubenstein had gone to jail for this. And it couldn't have been a lot, I don't know. People remembered it anyway. And so they're walking up, and Rubenstein, they can hear, says, "I don't have any money. My billfold's empty." And Kerner took out his billfold and gave him everything that was in it. And they walked up to the dunk tank, and he bought a few balls, and then he had to buy some more because he didn't hit them right away. Finally, he got to even with Dave Lee for turning him in to the police, and dunked Dave Lee, who wasn't afraid to sit there either, And that was a classic moment to see for me.
Spider John Kerner, Bruce Rubenstein, Dave Lee in the dunk tank.
Yeah, it was
a great
that was
one.
something.
So what are you going to miss most about Spider John?
Oh, I wanted always to not have to be sad, and hopefully he wasn't at the end. I think he his daughter came to visit from Denmark, and the children that he had and didn't maybe see very often anyway. And one he didn't know he had for a long time, I think, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to have the help that he had around him, and MJ and those people, his last days, before anybody knew that he was sick even, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and so he was there with friends. He got a long conversation with Red Nelson on the phone, I think. I don't know how long it was. You know, they're both old guys now. But he had many memories himself, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was in love several times. But I'll bet you that Danish girl was one of the best. You know, and Laura Carlson was another one who was pretty good. I thought she was a good woman. And so he liked women. What can I say? And he had friends that he liked to do the crossword in the end down at Palmer's, you know.
Yeah.
But he had health problems going on. And I'm just glad that he had good people around him, really. You know, that he wasn't alone.
Well,
he knew we loved him anyway. I mean, really, you know, I think.
He was an easy
But he
guy.
was an original mind. He wasn't. Willie Murphy told me that he was going to build, you know, he built John boats, the flat bottom boat, and he changed them a little bit and put a sail on them and rigged up a deal that, you know, would hold a sail. And maybe it was part oyster boat and part John boat, and, you know.
Right.
And he made about at least 4 boats, I think. And he loved his astronomy. He polished his own mirror for his big telescope that looked like a big red firecracker. It was huge, you know. It must have been about 8 inches across. And it must have taken him a good year to hand polish that mirror. You know. He said that he loved that stuff. And so, and you know, he read a lot. I think he was a real deep thinker, but you didn't hear about it, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? He didn't talk about it, what it was he was thinking about. And so the idea of success is, he wouldn't have had time to do that if he wanted to be a great big star that was booked for thousands of people, you know, and had a big manager, you know, I think. So I think he just wanted to be himself, really. Don't you?
He lived on his own terms and sounds like he went out on his own terms at the comfort of his family around him.
Yeah. It takes something to realize that, too, about our friends, you know. In the end, it's just you know.
Yeah.
And what you've been, you know, how you go out. Yeah, I loved them, though. You know. But there were so many young men that they were, I had 3 brothers, you know, so, and I grew up with a lot of boys in our neighborhood. So I always kind of just liked the boys, you know.
Yeah.
And but I learned so much from the young men, I think. The ones that had such great hearts, you know, so.
Well, you grew up in a very inspiring and energetic time. Judy, thank you so much.
Yes, and I wish I could hear you play these days.
Well, I'm going to be
still playing.
I'm going to play at Kerner's Memorial.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
good.
At kind of middle of the show. Are you going to make that?
I'm going to see. Although, if I'm not there, it's just because it's so hard for me to kind of get around.
Yeah.
And I can't, in crowds, maybe it's just takes a lot out of me these days. Hard to do. But I'm going to try. So.
Yeah. Well, if I don't see you there, Judy, I'm going to track you down, and so I can see you face to face, because I miss you, and I think you need another bottle of Blackie's Burgundy.
Well, also, can you find me a couple of Diamond Willow walking sticks, unpolished, just sanded down, but not polished?
Yes, like Dr. John.
Ooh, Dr. John. Wow.
Well,
Which the Dr. John?
Yeah, he always had those encrusted walking sticks.
Okay, I'm looking for a Diamond Willow. I want to send to Stelnicki, our washboard player. He's been ill, and he wants to finish one. He likes the shiny one. I like the Native American way of refinishing it.
We'll try that one for you. Well, Judy, thank you so much. We talked for almost an hour.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good. Bye-bye.
I could not be more happy to talk with this next woman who I've known for 40 years. She's one of the best fiddle players in Minnesota. And I bump into her every now and then, but not often enough. But we've got Mary Duchesne on the line, and we're going to be talking about the late, great Spider John Koerner. Mary, how are you this evening?
Well, just fine. Thank you, Paul. And I just loved John. Didn't everybody? I wanted John Koerner and John Beach to live forever. And we still got John Beach down there in Bisbee, Arizona. But I remember John Koerner from way back when. Do you remember when the Triangle Bar they put a piece of plywood over the pool table, and he'd sit up there on a straight back chair and play his guitar and sing?
That was a little bit before my time, but I've heard stories.
I think I'm a little bit older than you. Anyway, yeah. So I remember that, and that's how I think of him as sitting in a chair, with those great long legs, his knees sticking out, and his lightweight leather hiking boots or whatever, work boots, and tapping his feet in time to the music, forever. There's just nobody who plays quite like him. Yeah.
Well, anybody that saw Spider John Koerner with that foot like a jackhammer was so impressed with how he kept time. And when he had his hip or two replaced years ago, I know exactly why he's getting his hip replaced. It was that foot like a sledgehammer.
Well, he did a lot of walking, too. I would always see him walking around the neighborhood. I think I told you that when I saw John Wright, it wasn't too long after he'd had a heart attack or heart challenge. And I said, well, how do you feel now, John? Well, just walking down along the street in the West Bank, And he said, it came to me while I was walking here today that the leprechaun of mortality has taken up a post on my left shoulder. I mean, isn't that wonderful? That's how the guy talked. I mean, he talked slowly, and then he's just a poet, unique. And then I also had experiences. What's that?
He truly was a poet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I used to do some of his songs. I used to do the ones that weren't so hard to play on the guitar, rhythm guitar, like Everybody's Going for the Money. And
sure.
Taking My Time. That's a great one. Trying to get my musical partner, Nick Jordan, to learn that one. At any rate, but then we did see John then also as the years went on, when he was on the Prairie Home Companion, and I was in the Biscuit Band. And one time he was in the bus with us as we were trekking around Minnesota doing on one of Garrison's tours, and he's just so quiet and calm, just a nice person to travel with in the truck, in the bus. And there was one trip where we had a contest to see who could cook the best food en route, and I think Pop Wagner won it with some paella. But that's not on point. But then also, John and I were both on the Prairie Home cruise in the Caribbean in 2015.
Oh,
so
fun!
Yeah, and then I would just run into him in the parking lot at the Seward Co-op where we both shopped, because his last residence, his apartment that was down the street from there and across from Hoffman Guitars. So yeah, it was always fun to see him and hear about his. You know, he would go to Maine every year. His birthday is August 31st, I believe. He'd go to Maine and eat lobster every year on his birthday. And then, so I saw him with Judy Larson out at Red Nelson's house a couple of years ago, Red Nelson's birthday. Now, there's three old wonderful West Bank characters there. So I don't know what else to say. I adored John as everyone did. And I got to play with Charlie Parr at the Parkway Theater last fall when Charlie did a tribute to John. Did you hear about that one?
Yes, I did. Tell us about that night. It was wonderful.
Well, they dug up a copy of the movie called Secret of Sleep, which was a 1 hour long black and white goofy movie that John Kerner and Willie Murphy had made, where they're just chasing around the countryside and running into interesting characters and stuff. And so they dug that up, and Charlie didn't sell out the Parkway Theater, and so he introduced John, and John introduced the movie, and we all watched it. And then after the intermission, Charlie got, I think there were 7 of us up on stage to play some of John's songs and some folk songs associated with John, like What's the Matter with the Mill? Remember that one?
Sure.
John broke down, The Matter with the Mill, you know? Those good old folk songs that John used to do. So, and I don't know if this is off the record or not, but Charlie paid all of us in cash for participating in that, and he was able to give John $4,000.
Wow.
I don't know if that's for public. I don't know if that's for public consumption, but you could say
people should know that. I've been friends with Charlie for years, and Kerner and Dave Ray and Tony Glover was such a huge influence on Parr. What a wonderful way to pay John back.
Yes, it just shows what a wonderful guy Charlie is, and he has that same kind of quiet, introverted, deep personality that John Kerner had, and until he's on stage, and then the guy is a dynamo. Go figure, But
I know.
But and then of course it was such an honor that John gave Charlie one of his guitars. So he babies that guitar. He takes really good care of it. I've been next to it on stage and in the recording studio. Lucky me, huh?
Now, what was it like as a fiddle player playing with Kerner? Because he had such an idiosyncratic way of approaching those folk and blues songs.
Well, I never actually played with John, I don't think, except maybe backstage or something. I never actually performed with him. We were maybe on the same show sometimes. But, I wish I could play the fiddle the way Tony Glover played the harmonica, Now that would be the thing. But, no, I never actually performed with John. So, but you know me, I'll play anything. I like playing the blues or I'll play along with just about anything. But he and then Dave Ray too, just like some of the older players, like Lazy John Lucas, Lazy Bill Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never knew how many beats there were going to be between the verse and the chorus, kind of thing you had. Yeah, how Dave Ray was the same way with the Blue Nights, down at the East Hennepin Bar down there. People just would. You have to listen because he might do it five measures, or it might be 3 measures. You never knew. But those guys are so creative. You just listen and follow along.
Mary Duchesne, I was, been blessed to listen to those guys, play with them, hang out with them. Tell us, as a longtime West Bank folk musician, how important those memories are, both Dave Ray and Spider John Kerner and Tony Little Son Glover, that you have.
Well, their national reputation for making the blues safe for white people is intact, the Blues Rags and Hollers albums. And we kind of took them for granted in a way because we just heard them at the local bars playing, but we knew we were hearing somebody special and somebody with and of course I knew John not so much as a jug band musician, but Dave Ray was always involved. I was always in jug bands, and Dave Ray was involved with the jug band contest and those big parties and God, I remember one of them, Tony, wrote about me, and he called me the Demon Scorpio Fiddler in Seam Stockings. Is that sexy or what?
That's sexy. And Mary Duchesne, it's perfect. Perfect for you, my Scorpio sister.
Thank you, darling. Well, we were young and cute once, weren't we? Yes, now we're just old and cute, right? But
we're still...
and so I really loved those guys, and they were just a fixture of our lives. We didn't know how lucky we were to have such incredible talent, right in our midst.
But we do know...
Dave Hall and John Blackburn and all those guys back then, there was so much talent. So.
And, but we know now how lucky we were then.
Yeah. And, of course, you were always a part of that scene, when the singer-songwriter scene and the band scene with the Cats Under the Stars. And, that was an innovative band. And I'm sure you learned and picked up a lot from John Kerner and those other guys back in the day.
I had Jack Pasternacki from Cats and the Stars on the show last week. And we both shared the memories when we'd play our Tuesday nights at the 400 Bar. How honored we would be to see Kerner in the audience having a beer, listen to Cats Under the Stars. I mean, there was no greater honor to be had than to see Spider John in the audience.
I totally agree. You look up and there he is, and you think, oh boy, I better play my best. Yeah. But he was just hanging out like everybody else because, of course, he just was doing his thing. So
well, he was a model of humility.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Mary Duchesne, this has been just wonderful. I look forward to seeing you soon. I know you're still playing, and I can't wait to hear you saw away on that fiddle of yours because you're one of my favorite fiddle players in the world.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, Paul. And I haven't heard you for way too long, and I love your guitar playing and singing and your songwriting, too. So hopefully we'll cross paths again soon.
I hope so. Mary Duchesne, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I had a little cone and I put it in a sake and I took it to the mill where it come right back. What's the matter with the mill?
Done broke down.
What's the matter with the mill?
Yeah, done broke down.
Can't get no grind. Tell me what's the matter with the mill?
Well, Pearly tugging on overtime. Tell me the mill. Yeah, done broke down. What's the matter with the mill? Well, done broke down. What's the matter with the mill? Well, done broke down. Can't get no grind. Tell me what's the matter with the mill?
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We've got an old friend of mine on the air who is a good friend of Spider John Kerner's. In fact, Baby Grant Johnson was the man who called me, about 6 weeks ago and told me John was ill. I had no idea, but if there was anybody that was going to give me that news, I was glad it was my friend Baby Grant Johnson, and we're happy to have him on the air tonight. Grant, how are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you, Paul.
Tell us about, you're a damn good folk singer yourself, but tell us about Spider John's influence on a young Baby Grant Johnson.
Definitely. I go back to... I was lucky enough that we had a copy of Blues, Rags, and Hollers at home when I was young in the 70s, and it was actually a copy of the original audiophile pressing of the album, and it was seriously warped, and which made it so it wouldn't play the first two songs on either side, but. Yeah, what the heck? All these other songs are really good. I'm just going to keep listening to it.
Sure.
And I listened to it over and over. And, I found out why we had it is my dad knew those guys in the early days at the bars like the Mixers and the Red Nelson parties. And,
sure.
And even the coffee break, Mel Lasley's place and stuff like that. So, I'm like, oh yeah, but these guys are the greatest. Like, yeah. So, and then, there was finally a time when Kerner was playing, over at the University of Minnesota, and went to see him, and, it was in the 70s, and I was young, and...
Yeah, how old were you when you first heard the records, and then when you heard John?
Yeah, I was probably 3 or 4 when I started listening to the record, and, I was listening to Leadbelly and things like that as well at that time, but Kerner, Ray, and Glover were, I enjoyed equally as much as I did like the Leadbelly and Woody Guthrie stuff. And so, by the time I did first meet John, which was the time he played at the university, I was 5 or 7, and it was in the mid-70s. And, I was real excited. And, since my dad knew him, we went up and said hi at the end, and he shook my hand. He was like, oh, yeah, that's really great. I shook his hand, and John Kerner, and I tell my friends about it. They had no clue what I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I met the coolest singer of all time, man. It was John Kerner.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so... And then, of course, by the time I did learn how to play guitar, a few years later, that stuff was that was the first stuff I tried to mess around with, I guess.
Was your dad a musician?
He played more for fun. Never real professional. He would always bring his guitar to those parties, and he would end up letting guys like Dave Ray use it or something rather than play because he never quite figured it out.
Grant, I was playing at the Five Corners in the West Bank across from Palmer's. One night, Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark came in, and they were on a roll. They were freaking hammered. And I had met both of them before. And so on the break, I went, what do you guys do? They were playing somewhere in town. I don't know if it was the Fine Line or the Guthrie. And they just said, we're looking for Spider John Kerner. And I go, guys, it's your lucky night. He's bartending at Palmer's.
Across the street, right?
Yeah. So after my gig, I went and I asked Bill Sr. I snuck out I knew where this might be going, so I thought I'd better have a bottle of whiskey. So we went over when I got done playing, and those guys were at the bar, not that they needed more drinks from Spider John, but getting served by Spider John was a pretty big feather in their hats that evening. We ended up at the Radisson Hotel at a guitar pull, and so it's Townes Van Zandt would play a song, hand it to Guy. Guy would play a song, hand it to Spider John. Spider John would play a song, give me the guitar. I wouldn't play a song. I'd just give it back to Townes Van Zandt. I mean, three major players. And I did play about every third song, but it was really an incredible night. When I talked to Kerner about it over the years, I'd bring it up, and I said, man, he goes, I don't know if I could ever hang those Texas guys because they swung so hard. But it was truly, you know, it was before cell phone cameras and tape recorders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I could see it, the three of them sitting together passing the guitar like it was yesterday. And I think it made those guys trip.
Oh, I think so. I bet so, too. You know, I think that was probably in the early 90s or late 80s. And, you know, it's pretty cool that they made a point to find Kerner, you know. I love it.
They were literally on a mission from God.
Right. It's like, we got to find this guy. And the fact that they did, that, you know, it's so cool for them and you and everybody that actually happened. I love it.
Well, it was, you know, we talked to Mark Trias in last week's episode, in our first tribute to Spider John Kerner, and he was talking about when Lucinda Williams went into Treehouse Records and was really amazed to see the Kerner, Ray, and Glover.
So I was there that day. I remember that. And
tell us about it.
I went into Orfolk the same day. This was in 1989, and Lucinda was coming through town because Peter Jesperson got her a gig at the 7th Street Entry, and she, first of all, you know, like, I want somebody to, I don't want to play solo. I want like another guitarist, and they got Chris Osgood. And then the next thing was she called Orfolk, talked to Mark, and said, I'm looking for these guys, Kerner, Ray, and Glover. It's like, yes, I do happen to know them, because Mark had already put out one Dave Ray and Tony Glover record by that time, and I was in Orfolk. Mark told me, he's like, yeah, she called and like she wanted to track down Dave and Tony and John, and it's like, wow, that's cool. It's like, I better go to that show. So the show was at the 7th Street Entry, and I was doing something at the University of Minnesota. I think I was in a theater class or something. It's like, oh man, I hope this gets over soon. And it did, and I bolted down to the entry, and I saw the entire show.
Well, and
it was great. It was very memorable. Like Lucinda, her first time here, and so many things about it. Chris Osgood, and then Tony Glover ended up doing almost a full set with her of encore songs. It was really cool. I have a tape of it.
I don't know if you've heard the Ray Wiley Hubbard song that he wrote, I believe it was on his last record, the tribute to Kerner, Ray, and Glover. The name is escaping me, but it just goes to show you the nationwide influence that those three men had on musicians all over the country.
I know. I just heard that song, I believe on, maybe one of the local stations. Yeah, I suppose it was. And, you know, I do listen to that stuff. I go to Austin fairly often, and so I see those guys. But, yeah, he's got a song, and it's about the blues, rags, and hollers, and he just kind of says blues, rags, and hollers, and Kerner, Ray, and Glover over and over. It's a really funny song.
That's all you need to say.
As a lot of his are. But, yeah, Ray Wiley, you know, and it's cool that did, you know, extend, you know, down there, and, you know, all the English guys in the early 60s that heard blues, rags, and hollers, you know, that's often mentioned, which is really cool. So,
Grant Johnson, tell us about, over the years, now you got into those guys, what I call the Holy Trinity early, but you became a musician yourself. Did you get a chance to play some shows with Spider John?
Yeah, my early career was mostly in rock and roll bands, but I guess I was in my later 20s and started doing pretty much exclusively solo acoustic music, and yeah, right away I did end up on some bills with John, and Dave Ray as well. But and there was this one time I remember just talking to John, maybe at the bar, Palmer's or something like that, and it's like, you give me $100, I'll play a set, and it's like, okay. And I had, it was a time when I was booking some venues, booking talent for some venues, and it's like, if I can get Kerner, got to give him at least $100. I'd like to give him a little more, and yeah, it worked out. We would have me play and him play, and it's like, yeah, here's your $100, and I'd usually give him a little extra. But
yeah, well, what wonderful memories. So over the years, I know you were good friends with him. Talk about this when you found out he had started to get sick, because I believe you would pick him up and bring him over to Palmer's and help him get around. That must have been bittersweet for you, Grant Johnson.
Yeah. However, it was a very short period of time, because I would say about 3-4 months ago, he was in pretty decent shape.
Yeah.
For the most part. And then he complained of a bit of an ailment, and like, oh, got to get that looked at, went to the hospital, and this was all within this year.
Wow.
So, and yeah, it's only June now. So, he ended up getting kind of a diagnosis, and even after that, kind of seemed fairly positive. Like, let's see what happens. But at his age and things like that, it kind of ruled out going through like invasive like treatments and stuff like people do for what he had, and he was going to choose not to do that for obvious reasons. And but meanwhile, he did quit driving in the last couple months. I mean, I would say even within the last year, he was still driving, and he quit driving, and so he would have to get a ride, but he would still try to make it to Palmer's Bar and sit at the bar for 45 minutes or an hour and talk to who was there. And he would have one drink, and then he would say, "I'm out," and take off.
Grant Johnson.
It was always the best, though. Those even those times that more recently, were valuable times. We ended up getting to talk about some interesting stuff.
Tell us, Grant Johnson, we just got a few minutes left. Did Spider John Kerner give you any advice that will remain with you for the rest of your life, and may we all live to be 85 like John?
Right. He did offer advice sometimes. I remember telling him about going ice fishing in February, and he's like, "Okay, what are you going to bring to drink?" He's like, I'm for sure going to bring some Jim Beam. Like, shouldn't you probably bring some blackberry brandy? I think that's what people bring, and that's what he liked that. So that's what he usually had at Palmer's. It's like, well, you know what, John? I think you're right, man. That's what we're going to bring. So we did.
That is just a perfect way to remember Spider John Kerner, and such a great Minnesota story to end this interview with baby Grant Johnson. And I'll be seeing you on June 23rd at the Spider John Memorial at the Caboose, and then at the potluck at Palmer's afterwards. Thank you so much for sharing these stories. Thank you for breaking the news that John was sick. I couldn't have heard it from a sweeter guy than you, Grant. You have a beautiful weekend. Long live John Kerner, and may the universe bless us with all the memories we have with that incredible human being and one of America's greatest folk musicians.
Yeah, the music and legacy will live on for sure. He did it right. He did everything right. So I'm glad I got to know him.
Great, Grant. Thank you so much for your time, man. Have a beautiful evening.
All right, Paul. Thank you, man.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
See you later.
We are continuing our tribute to the late, great Spider John Kerner. I have a man on the line now that is almost as legendary as Spider John and Kerner Ray and Glover. Papa John Kolstad is on the line. Couldn't be more delighted to talk to Papa John. Papa John was a member of a seminal band in the late 1960s in Minneapolis called the Sorry Mothers. Tell us a little bit about the Sorry Mothers, John, before we get into your memories of Spider John Kerner.
Well, there's a lot of jug bands back in those days, a lot of interesting jug band music, and a lot of us played at late night parties after the bars closed. You know, the city shut down at 1, and the rest of us weren't ready for that. So there were some parties around, and a lot of people went there and played music until sometimes 5, 6 in the morning. This happened on a regular basis. That's where I learned to play, really. And the Sorry Mothers were part of that. We just were part of a group that would always go to the parties, and it's like, hey, I like playing with you. Yeah, I like playing with you. So we started doing that, and Bob Stelnicki was the main one, and then Cal Hand joined us, and then Judy Larson, and Rod Belleville, and Cal Hand, and pretty soon we were a practically famous group.
What was the name of that first record you guys did?
The Sorry Mothers Greatest Hits, Volume 3.
Well,
really, the first record was the Mill City Blues record, which was supposed to be originally just me and Soupy Schindler, a great harmonica player and a tremendous singer. And then we ended up we did a package deal. We did them both at the same time. But there's many things on the Mill City Blues record that also was backed up by the Sorry Mothers. So, you know, Bill Hinckley and Cal Hand played some great stuff. Washed up bass. The greatest washed up bass player in the world was Bob Stelnicki. He's on that record. So
cool. Now, Papa John Kolstad, when did you bump into Kerner Ray Glover or Spider John for the first time?
1961 or 2. A friend of mine had introduced me to a place on the St. Paul campus on Oak and Washington called Coffee Break, and it was kind of like an original beatnik coffee house. Very quiet. People didn't talk loud. Everybody kind of whispered, and people played chess. I mean, it was like that 50s kind of thing, and it was a really nice place, very comfortable. And, hot cider and coffees and teas. And then I found out that this group was playing there, and someone said, you got to see them. Because there was others. There was a guy that played kind of a semi-flamenco music and sang, and a guy named Gene Sumdahl, who I still know to this day, and I think Gene is still with us. But Gene was singing this song in the coffee break, sitting up on a table. He sang this song with the lyric, if you don't like my peaches, baby, why do you shake my tree? And I went to him after the song, and I said, what is that? I love it. He said, that's called the blues. And that was the start of it. And then I found out Kerner Ray and Glover were going to be there, and I went and watched them, and unbelievable. All of them, just amazing. No PA system, and nobody talked, and nobody applauded. It was gauche. You just listened, and then the ultimate compliment was nodding, going, yeah. That's just the way it was, and it was kind of a nice thing. If people came in there and talked, several members of the group would begin using language that would send them out the door. It wasn't directed at them. They were just saying things, and these particular people they knew that they would be offended by this, and so they soon were gone. And everybody said, "What a relief!" And then they went back to the music.
Wow.
So it was great. Then they got that first record came out on that audio file, Blues, Rags, and Hollers. And the sophistication of that group, they were all young. Dave was, I think, 21.
Wow,
Kerner was a couple years older, maybe 3 years older than that. But the sophistication of the music they were doing and the artistry, I don't often use that word artistry, but you listen to that, and it was artistry. It was just, they were just in a groove and at such a young age. So
it's really amazing when you think about it. Three white guys that dove so deep into that early country blues. I mean, some of the first guys in the country doing that.
Yep. Yeah, they were. Well, of course, there were other places on the coast doing it, but at that time, early on, they didn't know each other. Then then records started coming out of Dave Van Ronk and some of the people that were doing that. But Dave Van Ronk was a much different style of doing it. He was more out of the Reverend Gary Davis tradition. And I've got some notes that I was going to comment on about Kerner, particularly Kerner's style, but there's something about Dave Ray and John Kerner that is unprecedented. You and I both have listened to tons and tons of old records, but trying to hear new ideas and old ideas and maybe learn some things. And I listened for the origins of the kind of sound that they had. I could not find any. There's a closeness to John Kerner. He added strings to his 6-string guitar to get a more twangy feel.
Yeah.
He added some treble strings onto it, and sometimes he started with 1, I think, then he ended up with 3. So he went from a 6-string to a 7 to a 9. And there is a person that did that before him, and that was Big Joe Williams, who was a blues singer, I think, from Kansas City. And he was up here and performed a number of times. So if there's any influence that I could find at all, it was that. The other thing that they did that was I can't find any precedent for, and I don't know hardly anybody that does it much but me. And I know a couple other people that are influenced by Kerner. And that's playing dominant 7th chords, like a C7 chord, only you move it all up the neck. So you can play it at D, and you can play it at F, you can play it at G. You can play a whole song with one form, and
right.
You can get a rhythm by alternating the bass. And they just did this incredible thing with that. And I couldn't find anybody else that did that. I mean, some people did a little bit when they played those chords, but nobody used it the way they used it. They used other dominant 7 forms to get this rhythm, because rhythm was a really big thing about what both of them did.
Right. What? Now you've played quite a bit out in the Boston, Cambridge area, and I know Kerner used to hold forth at the Plow and Star and other joints in Cambridge. Did you ever bump into John when you guys were bouncing around the East Coast together?
Oh, yeah, I saw him all the time. I'd go to the Plow and Stars to see him. I lived out there for 5 years studying music. I went out there to find out what I was doing all these years, and I found out. And so I'd run into him, and then when I went on tour after I got through studying, I was in Boston, and I needed a place to stay, and I called Kerner, and he said, "Yeah, you can stay with me." He said, "Oh, you got a car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I need a ride out to Beverly, which is northeast of Boston, a suburb. There's always a nice club there, and he was playing there." I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." So I went out to the club with him, and when we got back to his place in Cambridge, we got back there and we were both hungry, and he said, "Oh, you want something?" Kerner, "Oh, hey, I'm hungry. You want something to eat?" I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Okay, I'll make something." So he made me a cucumber sandwich. I'd never had a cucumber sandwich before in my life. I thought, a cucumber sandwich? There's no meat in that. But it was wonderful. Of course, when you're hungry, anything tastes good.
Sure. Oh, that's a great story. What? So you were really at the beginning of Colonel Ray and Glover, and you saw their meteoric rise really through the '64 Newport Folk Festival, and then I think John, or maybe the three of them, played the '65 Folk Festival when Dylan went electric. What was did you ever have a chance to bump into Dylan at any of those times when he came back to Minneapolis?
Well, I was at the coffee break the night he came back after his first Columbia record. I don't know if it had been released yet, but everybody knew he was going to be on Columbia. Big deal, you know.
Sure.
So he came back to the coffee break, and I was there, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's going to want to." This is the people in the audience. He's going to want to bow down and ask to be back part of the community. And then when he got there, everybody was like down kissing his shoes. That was pretty funny. So I didn't know who he was because I'd come in after he'd left. I'd come to the university area, but I remember they were all. And of course, he came to see Kerner and Dave and Tony. They'd been friends in Dinkytown, and I think Kerner showed him some stuff on the guitar. So that was when I had first met him. But then I ran into him many times through the years. But I've never really had a conversation with him. He's pretty quiet, and I'm not going to go up to him and try and force a conversation. If he wanted to have one, he would have come up and talked to me. He came to see us when we played at the Gaslight in New York in the city. We opened for Happy and Artie Traum and a young woman singer named Maria something or Maria Moldar.
Back then, she was Maria D'Amato.
Yeah, originally.
Yeah,
she married Jeff and became. But anyway, her record was not out yet, and was broke, so they brought her down from Woodstock and said, "Hey, come sing with us. We'll give you some money." So they did that, and we were the opening act, and Dylan was there, and Tony Glover was there. And it was all kinds of celebs were in the audience. It was amazing. The bar next door had Loudon Wainwright. See who else? Dave Van Ronk. I mean, it was who's who. Folk music. We're all within these downstairs and upstairs, these two places.
Well, then I think the bar you're referring to is the Kettle of Fish.
It really was. I loved the Kettle of Fish. It was really, really fun.
There's a great story. When Bob Dylan took Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones to see Kerner at the Kettle of Fish, and they walked in, and Brian Jones said to Dylan, he goes, "I thought he was a black guy."
Yeah, right. A lot of people did. Even black people thought that they were black.
So much fun.
Lazy Bill Lucas told me, he said, "Why, hell, boy," Lazy Bill, I talked to him. "Why, hell, boy, when I first met Kerner and Glover, I looked at him, I said, well, hey, hell, you boys white. I thought you was black." So,
Lazy Bill, of course,
anyway.
a great piano player who moved up to Minneapolis after playing with Muddy Waters for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about how vibrant the folk scene. Now, you were there when it kind of migrated from Dinkytown to the West Bank. Did you ever play at the Triangle Bar, John Colstead?
Yeah, well, first I was hanging around there all the time because, Kerner, Ray, of course, Glover played with both of them, Willie Murphy, Lazy Bill Lucas with the News About the Blues, Tommy Ray. Leo Kottke played there a few times. Didn't play there all the time, but he played there some. There was a lot of great players there, and so I just go and watch them. What a great place to learn. I was still developing as a player and getting into blues and learning about this stuff. So I was there almost every night watching them. Then I auditioned in 1966, and Jimmy gave me a job. Couldn't believe it that I was playing with on the same stage. Trady says with John Kerner and Dave Ray and Willie Murphy. Willie was very frightening at that time. He looked so gruff, and he never said anything to me. But apparently he liked my blues singing. I didn't find that out for some time. Kerner's the one that actually showed me that. So, yeah, well, I said, Willie's just, to me, is a genius. I thought that the first time I saw him, and I've never changed my mind. And I just love what he does and how he just knows music so well. And he said, well, I should tell you, he said, he probably wouldn't tell you, but he said he liked the way you sang the blues. And that's a big compliment coming from Willie.
Huge compliment. Did you ever get to see young Bonnie Raitt at the Triangle?
Well, I got to see young Bonnie Raitt in Cambridge when she was playing in a little bar, and hardly anybody was there. And she was good, right on. And I remember her manager was there. Dick Waterman was the manager at that time. And Dick Waterman turned to us, and he's I won't use the expletive that he used, but he said, she's going to be a blank star.
Yeah.
And we all said, sure, Dick. Yeah, we're all going to be stars. So there was just no one thought, well, yeah, she's great. That doesn't mean she's going to be a star. Well, he said, no, she's got star quality. She's going to be a star. Of course, he was right.
Dick was right now.
And she was a huge fan of Colonel Ray and Glover.
How did Bonnie Raitt move to Minneapolis? Because I know, she recorded her first record with Willie and the Bees, but I've never quite figured out how she ended up in Minneapolis.
Well, I didn't know that she lived here. I think she was here she was doing some recordings with her early recordings, which I think Dave Ray did the recordings. He had a studio. I think they did the recordings there.
Sweet Jane Studio.
I don't know all that history because I was gone during that period. I was out in Boston.
When you were talking about Leo Kottke, I bumped into Charlie Parr. I've got a radio show up in Duluth, and he came and played, and he had the 12-string guitar that Kerner willed him, gave it to him. And when I think back about your 12-string playing, Leo Kottke, Peter Lang, Dave Ray, John Kerner, I mean, it was like 12-string city in Minneapolis for years, right?
Yeah, it was. Although Kottke's playing was so much different. He wasn't connected with the scene in the sense of his style and what he played. He had a complete. I don't really know what his roots was. I think he listened to John Fahey, where it came from. But I never really. I've known Leo since that time. I used to see him all the time, and he was a very funny performer. He was just a great sense of humor. I loved to go hear his strange comments. They were really great, and his wonderful playing. It was a really amazing scene. I mean, to think how lucky I am to be part of that. And I've learned, every place you went, it was a lesson for me. And, I was eager to learn it because think about it. I'm this novice coming into this scene, and you got towers like Willie Murphy and Kerner and Ray. And, boy, you've got to pay attention and come up to speed with, at least best you can with those people. So.
Yeah, you got to rise.
I'd like to say a couple of things about John Kerner, though.
I've
been thinking about this, and one thing about him is that he's a person and a performer of really great integrity, and I suppose everybody is to some degree, but there was just something about him, a real class act, and he was really an extraordinary singer as well as an extraordinary guitar player. And he would do things on the guitar that he would just improvise things and do things rhythmically. And, it was never the same. He would play, every time you go to see him, he'd be playing something different. And he'd get bored with doing the same thing over and over again. And he would sing songs different. He'd change the lyrics around. He'd change the timing of the lyrics around and kind of have fun with the whole thing. So, and he was originally here. He came here to study engineering. He was going to be an engineer. Mm-hmm. And so then he ran into the party scene and Red Nelson's parties, and he said, hey, I like this better than studying engineering. So that's what he started doing.
Well, and we're all the better for it. Papa John Kolstad, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I've got to ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific favorite memories of Spider John, either as a performer or just hanging out with him. He had an incredible sense of humor, as anybody that saw him perform know. But is there anything that really sticks out in your mind now that he's passed that you remember fondly?
Well, one of the things that he told me, you know, I was the person asked to induct him into the Minnesota Blues Hall of Fame. I was the host and the presenter of that, and I did a little presentation of him. So I had to go talk to him because I didn't want to say things that he wouldn't like. Because he didn't like hyperbole. He didn't like, oh, he's the greatest, you know, all that kind of stuff. He would not be happy with that. So I went to him and said, look, let's talk about what you would like me to say. If there's something I want to say that you don't like, it's gone. I won't do it. And so we had a good time. And he told me one of the things that he was most moved by in his life was when he was in his, I don't know exactly when, it was in his 70s sometime. I think they had a birthday party at the Cedar Cultural Center.
Yeah.
And there's some people there who were from Indian extraction, and they came up to him and they said, hey, I think that you're approaching 1,000 moons. And that's a really, really big thing in our culture. They were fans of his, and they said, we would like to do the 1,000 moon program with you. And so they did a calculation of exactly when it was, and they put the whole thing in. And they did the whole thing. They covered all the expenses for it. And he said that they're all dressed in these costumes. And he said it was just the most incredible experience. And they were honoring him and honoring his going through 1,000 moons. And
Wow.
he said it was just one of the neatest things that he'd ever done. But there are a couple other things that I'm surprised about Koerner. Now, he played blues. He played this Womp Bomb stuff, which is actually the name of one of the songs they did. They asked Dave Ray one time in an interview, what do you call your kind of music? And he said, we call it Womp Bomb, whatever that means. I think it didn't mean anything. That was just his answer to it. So I was, for a while I was playing at the Palmer's Bar with kind of a swing band, jazz band, Sam Fisk on trumpet, and Bill Smith on harmonica, and Randy Sabine sat in a few times. And anyway, so we were playing there, and Koerner was sitting at the end of the bar often. And one night we were playing, having a great time, doing a lot of improvising, and a lot of really good players. And Koerner came out to the stage, and he's trying to talk to me about something. I couldn't hear what he was saying because the band drowned it out. And I said, I'll talk to you at the break. And so, but I could tell he was really happy with the music we were doing. So I went and talked to him at the break, and I said, I couldn't hear you, but I thought you liked the music we were doing, so I'm pleased about that. He said, oh, yeah, man, but I can't play those tunes. I can't play like that. And I said, well, I heard you play on one of your records, Stargazer. You played Stardust, and you did a really nice job of it. I really loved the way you did it. He goes, oh, yeah, well, but I didn't sing all the notes. And I said, listen, I heard Hoagie sing that from a record. Hoagie Carmichael wrote it. I said, and he didn't sing it all the notes. He sang it like you did. Then Koerner turns to me and he said, yeah, people wouldn't guess it, but that's my favorite song. So John Koerner, the Womp Bomb guy, his favorite song was Stardust. So then I think we're running out of time, but there's one last story.
Go ahead.
That I ended my presentation with. I had played at, you remember Booker White, the blues slide player?
Yeah.
Great player. And I think it was in the 70s that he had a stroke and had big hospital bills like Americans do when they get sick. And I got a call from Tom Rush that they were doing a benefit and would I play. So, of course, I was honored to be able to do that. And Mike Turk and I went and played the benefit. So we go out to, I think, again, it was in Beverly, a little bit north of the city and east by the coast. And we walk in the door, and Tom Rush was doing his set already. And I'm listening to him, and I was astounded because I'd seen him do a lot of folk music and a lot of his own songs, but I'd never seen him do what I was seeing there. What he was doing, it was a record, a cover from a record of Duncan and Brady. The Koerner, it was Koerner's version of Duncan and Brady, and with all of the talk, except Kerner never did the same talk twice. So, but he was trying to copy what Kerner said on the record. But he did a pretty darn good job of it. But what was astounding about it is I realized that, oh my God, Tom Rush also is a huge Kerner fan. So when he went upstairs to the dressing room, I went up and I said, I had no idea that you were a huge Kerner fan. But obviously you were. And I said, I'm a huge Kerner fan and have been influenced a great deal by him. And he says, oh, yeah, let me tell you a story. He said, there's a place in Cambridge, it was called Club 47. And it was where all the folk singers played. So those were Baez and Van Ronk and Pat Sky. Who?
A young Bob Dylan.
Well, I don't know that Dylan, it's possible. I don't know that Dylan was ever associated with that. He might have been beyond that already. But anyway, so they were all sitting around, and it was a hangout place as well as a performance place, and right on Harvard Square. So they're all sitting around talking, like, a session where the musicians are sitting around chatting. And then somebody says, hey, I wonder if any one of us will ever make it. And there was quiet in the room, and then everybody laughed. Like, never any of us are going to make it. Of course, by making it means they wouldn't be sleeping in the car on the floor at people's houses and hitchhiking across the country with their guitar. That would be making it if they made enough money to do that. And so they all laughed about that anybody would make it. And then they got silent again, he said. And then somebody said, except. And then everybody listened. He said, except Kerner. If anybody is going to make it, Kerner is going to make it. And everybody in the room chimed in. And he said, like, one person said, oh, you're right. He's the greatest singer. Someone else, oh, he's the best guitar player. Oh, he's the best entertainer. Oh, he's the best joke teller. And it just went around. Each saying, they all thought that Kerner was the best in all of those categories. If anybody's going to make it, it's got to be Kerner. So I told that story before I inducted him, and I said, and so I'm here today to present this to John Kerner, because to me, I believe John Kerner did make it. And then I did the presentation to him. So that was a great lead into that presentation of the Minnesota Blues Hall of Fame as a folk legend, as a blues legend.
And he truly was. As are you, Papa John Kolstad. Well, thank you so much for these stories.
Hey, I'd like it just so people are looking for what I'm doing. They say, I'm playing with a group called the Popettes with two great women harmony singers, and we do all these swing tunes and pop, old jazz pop tunes and standards, and some blues, some really nice blues. So you can watch out for Papa John and the Popettes.
Do you have a website, John?
You can go on Facebook. There's a web page for Papa John and the Popettes, and then we do have a website, and it's papajohnandthepopettes.com. And there's some videos of us out there, and you can see that people have taken through the days, and they're remarkably good. Just people with a camera, with a cell phone taking pictures. Some pretty good videos. So, it's really a pleasure to talk with you, and there's a sadness, and yet I think of it really as a celebration of a person that just was an amazing character and kind of lived the life he wanted to live.
He sure did. Papa John Kolstad, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, man. Bye-bye.
And now the purple dusk of twilight time steals across the meadows of my heart. High up in the sky, the little stars climb, always reminding me that we're apart. You wander down the lane and far away, leaving me a song that will not die. Love is now the stardust of yesterday, the music of the years gone by. Sometimes I wonder why I spend the lonely night dreaming of a song. The melody haunts my reverie, and I am once again with you. when our love was new, and each kiss an inspiration. But that was long ago. Now my consolation is in the stardust of a song. Beside.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. These Spider John Kerner tribute shows were brought to you in part by Hi-Fi Records and Hairs in Loring Park, Willie's American Guitars, by Como Park in St. Paul, and Grumpy's Bar Northeast and Palmer's Bar on the West Bank. Follow me at paulmetza.com. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.